I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom at 2 o'clock in the morning, watching my husband sleep next to another woman. The moonlight coming through the window I'd personally chosen during our home renovation 3 years ago cast a silver glow across their faces. They looked peaceful, comfortable, like they belonged there together. Her head was on my pillow. The pillow I'd bought from that expensive boutique in downtown Atlanta because it was supposed to help with neck pain. Her dark hair spread across the silk pillowcase I'd saved up for. Brandon's arm was draped over her waist in a way he hadn't touched me in months. My hands shook as I held my phone, taking picture after picture. The camera clicks were silent, but each one felt like thunder in my chest. I couldn't breathe right. The air in my house, in the bedroom I'd painted a soft gray after weeks of testing samples, felt thick and wrong. There were wine glasses on both nightstands. 2 glasses. The bottle of expensive red we'd been saving for our anniversary sat empty on my dresser. My anniversary. Our anniversary. The one coming up in 3 weeks that I'd been planning something special for. Clothes were scattered across the floor. Her red blouse hung on my reading chair. The chair where I sat every Sunday morning with coffee and a book. Her skirt was crumpled by the bathroom door. Brandon's shirt and pants made a trail from the bedroom door to the bed, like he couldn't wait to get them off. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn on every light and flip the mattress and watch them tumble to the floor. I wanted to ask him how he could do this in our bed. In our home. In the space we'd built together over 8 years of marriage. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I stood there in the doorway, my overnight bag still in my hand from the trip I wasn't supposed to be back from yet. The fake trip to Portland I'd invented to test him. The test my best friend Paige said I was crazy for even considering. Brandon wouldn't cheat, she'd said 2 weeks ago over lunch. He's too boring for that. But then she'd seen the look on my face. The look that said I already knew something was wrong. The look that came from 6 months of watching the man I married become a stranger. Okay, she'd said quietly. If you really think something's going on, test him. Tell him you're going on a business trip. See what he does. So I did. I told Brandon I had a consulting job in Portland. 5 days redesigning the lobby and restaurant of a boutique hotel. I showed him fake flight confirmations I'd created. I packed a suitcase in front of him. I kissed him goodbye at the door 3 days ago and drove to a hotel across town instead of the airport. For 2 days, I watched our security cameras from my laptop. Brandon went to work. Came home. Watched television. Ate dinner alone. He texted me goodnight both nights. He seemed normal. On the 3rd day everything changed. At 7:15 in the evening, I watched him pull into our driveway. But he wasn't alone. A woman got out of the passenger seat. She was laughing at something he said. Even through the grainy camera footage I could see her touching his arm. Being familiar with him. I recognized her immediately. Courtney. Courtney from his office. Courtney who he'd mentioned exactly 3 times in the past year, always casually. Courtney thinks the Johnson account needs more attention. Or Courtney suggested that new software program. He'd made her sound like a colleague. Someone boring and professional. The woman walking into my house with her hand on my husband's back didn't look boring. I watched them go inside. I watched the living room camera until Brandon walked over and turned it off. Then the kitchen camera went dark. Then the one in the hallway. He knew where all the cameras were. I'd shown him when we installed the security system 2 years ago after the break-ins in our neighborhood. He'd helped me position them. Now he was turning them off so he could betray me in private. I'd sat in that hotel room for 20 minutes, shaking. Part of me wanted to believe there was an explanation. Maybe she needed a place to stay. Maybe her car broke down. Maybe this was innocent. But I knew better. I drove home. It took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. I parked 3 houses down so he wouldn't see my car. I walked to my house in the dark, using my phone's flashlight to find my way up the side path to the basement door. We never used that entrance. Brandon probably forgot it existed. I had my keys. I could get in. The basement was dark and cold. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, hearing sounds from above. Laughter. Music playing softly. The clink of glasses. They were having a party. In my house. While I was supposed to be 2,000 miles away. I crept up the basement stairs slowly. The door at the top was cracked open. I could see into the kitchen. Brandon was opening the wine. The expensive bottle from our anniversary collection. Courtney was leaning against the counter, watching him with a smile that made my stomach hurt. Your wife has good taste, she said. My wife. Like I was someone else. Someone far away who didn't matter. She does, Brandon agreed. That's why I married her. Courtney laughed. But she's always working. Always busy with clients and designs and making everything perfect. She doesn't know how to just relax anymore. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. I know how to relax, Courtney said, moving closer to him. I backed down the stairs before I could see what happened next. I made it to the basement bathroom and threw up in the toilet. Quietly. So quietly. Because even now, even watching my marriage end, I was worried about making a scene. I spent 3 hours in the basement guest room. It was the room I used for storage, full of fabric samples and old project files. I sat on the small couch in the dark, listening to them move through my house. Listening to them go upstairs. Listening to my husband take another woman to our bed. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat there with my phone, documenting everything I could. I went through his cloud storage using the password he didn't know I had. I found photos. Messages. Months of messages. By the time the sun started coming up, I knew everything. The affair had been going on for 7 months. 7 months of lies. 7 months of late nights that weren't really work. 7 months of him touching someone else while coming home to kiss me goodnight. At 6 in the morning, I heard them in the bedroom above me. I heard her laugh. I heard the shower running. I heard them getting ready like a normal couple on a normal morning. At 7 they both left. Brandon called out something about having an early meeting. The front door closed. Car doors slammed. Engine started. Silence. I waited 10 more minutes to be sure. Then I climbed the stairs from the basement and walked through my house. Evidence was everywhere. The wine glasses in the sink. Her earring on the coffee table. The throw blanket from the couch tossed on the floor. In the bedroom the sheets were tangled. Her perfume hung in the air, mixing with his cologne in a way that made me sick. I took pictures of everything. Then I went upstairs to the guest room, locked the door, and finally let myself cry. But even as tears ran down my face, soaking into the pillow, I wasn't crying because I wanted him back. I was crying because the man I thought I knew never existed at all. And I was crying because I knew exactly what I was going to do next. 8 years ago, I met Brandon at a gallery opening in Buckhead. I was 26 years old and had just started my interior design business. I had 3 clients, a tiny studio apartment in Midtown, and dreams bigger than my bank account could handle. I'd worn my best dress to that gallery opening, the black one I'd found at a thrift store, and altered myself. I was there because one of my clients had invited me, and I never turned down a chance to network. Brandon was there with his firm. He was 29, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my rent, and he smiled at me from across the room like he'd just discovered something wonderful. "You look like you actually understand what you're looking at," he'd said, walking up to stand beside me in front of an abstract painting that honestly made no sense to me. "I'm pretending," I'd admitted. "I'm an interior designer, not an art expert." He'd laughed. A real laugh, not the polite chuckle people give at networking events. "I'm pretending too. I'm a financial consultant. I only understand numbers." We talked for 2 hours. He asked about my business, my dreams, my plans. He listened like every word mattered. When the gallery closed, he asked for my number. 3 days later, we had our first date. 6 months after that, he proposed. Back then, Brandon was everything I thought I wanted. He was stable where I was chaotic. He was organized where I was creative. He supported my business dreams when my own family thought I should get a real job with benefits. He helped me with spreadsheets and tax planning. He celebrated every new client like it was his own victory. We got married at a small church with 50 people watching. I wore a simple white dress I'd found on sale. We couldn't afford a honeymoon, so we spent 3 days at a bed and breakfast 2 hours away. It was perfect. For years it stayed perfect. Brandon's career took off. He made partner at his firm. We bought our first house, a small ranch that needed work. I designed every room myself, learning as I went. My business grew. I went from 3 clients to 10, then 20. I hired an assistant. I rented actual office space instead of working from our dining room table. We talked about having kids someday. Not yet, we always said. When the business was more stable. When we'd saved more money. When we traveled to all the places on our list. There was always a reason to wait. 3 years ago, we bought the house in Brookhaven. The house I'm standing in right now. The house where I found my husband in bed with another woman. This house was my dream project. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen that needed a complete renovation, and a backyard that was mostly dirt and hope. I spent a year designing every detail. I chose every paint color, every light fixture, every piece of hardware on every cabinet. Brandon handled the financial side, making sure we didn't overspend, keeping track of contractors and invoices. When it was finished, the house was featured in Atlanta Home magazine. My business exploded after that. I went from small residential projects to commercial work. Hotels started calling. Restaurants wanted my vision. I hired 3 more people. I was working 60 hours a week, but I loved it. That's when things started changing. It was small at first. Brandon working later. Missing dinners. Checking his phone constantly. I thought he was busy with work too. His firm was expanding. He was managing bigger accounts. We were both building our careers. That's what couples did, right? They supported each other through busy seasons. But then the distance became more than just scheduling conflicts. He stopped asking about my projects. When I'd come home excited about landing a new hotel contract, he'd nod and say, "That's great," without looking up from his laptop. He stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. He'd just wave from the kitchen and walk out. Our bedroom became a place where we slept on opposite sides of the mattress. When I tried to initiate intimacy, he was always too tired, too stressed, too distracted. After months of rejection, I stopped trying. 6 months ago, I knew something was seriously wrong. He started going to the gym at odd hours. He bought new clothes without me. He changed his phone password when it had been the same 4 digits for years. He took calls in the other room. He came home smelling like perfume he said came from a coworker who hugged him at a retirement party. I wanted to confront him, but I was scared. Scared of what the answer might be. Scared that if I accused him of something and was wrong, I'd damage our marriage beyond repair. Scared that if I was right, everything I'd built my life around would fall apart. So I convinced myself I was being paranoid. I told myself successful couples went through rough patches. I blamed my busy schedule. I blamed his stress. I blamed everything except the truth I didn't want to face. Until 2 weeks ago when Paige noticed. Paige and I had been friends since college. She was a high school teacher married to Travis, and they had 2 kids who I was auntie to. We met for lunch once a month, no matter how busy we got. "What's wrong?" she'd asked before I'd even sat down. "Nothing," I'd lied. "Simone." She'd given me the look. The one that said she could see right through me. "You've lost weight. You have circles under your eyes. And you've checked your phone 4 times since walking in here. What's going on?" So I told her. Everything. The distance. The late nights. The way Brandon looked at me like I was a roommate instead of his wife. The perfume. The changed passwords. The feeling in my gut that something was wrong. "You think he's cheating?" Paige had said. "Not a question. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy." "You're not crazy. Trust your gut." She'd been quiet for a moment, stirring her iced tea. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. What if I'm wrong? What if you're right?" That question had haunted me for days. What if I was right? What if Brandon was betraying me? What would I do? Then Paige had called me with an idea. "Test him," she'd said. "Tell him you're going on a business trip. See how he acts. That feels manipulative. He might be cheating on you." I think manipulation is already happening. She was right. I knew she was right. So I planned it. I invented a fake consulting job in Portland. I created fake documents. I rehearsed my lies until they sounded like truth. I became the kind of person who sets traps for her husband because I couldn't be the kind of person who just asked him directly if he was betraying me. 3 days ago, I kissed Brandon goodbye at our front door. He'd hugged me longer than usual. He'd told me he'd miss me. He'd said to have a safe flight. Then he'd stood in the driveway and waved as I drove away to catch a plane I was never getting on. And now I know the truth. My husband is cheating on me with a woman named Courtney. In our house. In our bed. With our anniversary wine. Everything I thought I had was a lie. But here's what Brandon doesn't know yet. I'm not the same girl he met at that gallery 8 years ago. I'm not the one who needs him to help with spreadsheets and planning. I built a business. I designed homes that people pay thousands of dollars for. I learned how to fight for what I want in a world that doesn't like giving women power. And right now what I want is revenge. Not the violent kind. Not the kind that makes me look crazy or desperate. The kind that takes everything he thought was his and shows him exactly what he lost. I spent 8 years being the perfect wife. Supportive. Understanding. Patient. Those days are over. Planning to catch your husband cheating is harder than it sounds. You have to think through every detail. Every lie has to sound like truth. Every fake document has to look real enough that he won't question it. You have to act normal while planning his downfall. You have to kiss him goodbye knowing you're setting a trap. I started planning the fake trip 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave. First, I needed a believable reason to go. It couldn't be too exciting or Brandon might want to come along. It couldn't be too boring or he'd wonder why I was taking it. It had to be work-related because that was the only thing that kept me away from home for days. I invented a boutique hotel in Portland that needed a complete lobby and restaurant redesign. I told Brandon the owner had seen my work in Atlanta Home Magazine and specifically requested me. The job would take 5 days on site, evaluating the space and meeting with contractors. The pay would be excellent, enough to justify the trip. Brandon had nodded, barely looking up from his laptop. That's great, baby. Portland's supposed to be beautiful. You could come with me, I'd offered, testing him. Make it a work trip for you too. Can't. I have the Henderson account presentation that week. Can't miss it. The relief on his face was obvious. He didn't want to come with me. He wanted me gone. That's when I knew for sure that something was wrong. The old Brandon would have found a way to come. He would have wanted to explore Portland together, even if just for a weekend. This Brandon couldn't wait for me to leave. Next, I created the fake documents. Flight confirmations, hotel reservations, a proposal document from the fake client. I have design software and enough skills to make anything look professional. I left the documents open on my laptop one night, letting Brandon see them when he walked by. This Portland thing is really happening, he'd said, glancing at the screen. Yeah. I leave next Wednesday. I'll miss you. He kissed the top of my head, but it felt automatic. Practiced. I'll miss you too. Was. We were both telling lies. I packed for the trip in front of him the night before. I put clothes in a suitcase, though not the clothes I'd actually need. I packed my laptop and design portfolios. I made a show of triple checking that I had everything. You're going to do amazing, Brandon had said, watching from the bed. This could lead to more hotel work. I hope so. When do you land tomorrow? Around 3 Portland time. 6 our time. Text me when you get there. I will. That night, we slept in the same bed for the last time, though neither of us knew it yet. Brandon fell asleep quickly like always. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was really going through with this. Part of me hoped I was wrong. Part of me hoped Brandon would spend the 5 days missing me being faithful, proving my suspicions were just paranoid thoughts. But a bigger part of me knew better. In the morning, Brandon drove me to the airport. We'd argued about that. I can drive myself, I'd said. You have to work. I want to take you. It's early anyway. So he drove me. We sat in morning traffic, the radio playing songs neither of us heard. At the departure drop-off, he got out and hugged me tight. 5 days, he'd said into my hair. 5 days. I love you, Simone. I love you too. Another lie. Or maybe not. Maybe I still loved him but knew that love was about to die. He drove away. I watched his car disappear into traffic. Then I walked into the airport, went through security with my boarding pass for a flight I wasn't taking, and walked right back out through the other exit. My car was in long-term parking. I sat in it for an hour, shaking, wondering if I should just go home and forget this whole test. Wondering if I was being crazy. Wondering if I was destroying my marriage over suspicions. Then I drove to the hotel I'd secretly booked across town. Not in Brookhaven where we lived. Not in Midtown where my office was. Somewhere Brandon would never think to look if by some chance he needed to find me. The hotel room was small and basic. 1 bed, 1 desk, 1 television. I set up my laptop on the desk and opened the security camera app for our house. We had cameras in the living room, kitchen, front porch, and backyard. Not in the bedrooms or bathrooms because we'd agreed that was too invasive. Now I regretted that decision. Day 1 was boring. Brandon came home from work at his normal time. He ordered takeout. He watched television. He texted me around 8 asking how Portland was. I sent back a message about the beautiful flight and how tired I was from traveling. He sent back a smiley face. At 11 he turned off all the downstairs lights and went upstairs. The cameras showed an empty house. I sat in my hotel room feeling stupid. Feeling guilty for not trusting him. Day 2 was the same. Brandon went to work. Came home. Made dinner. Texted me asking about the hotel project. I sent back messages about meetings with contractors and design plans. He sent back encouraging responses. Everything seemed normal. I started thinking I'd made a terrible mistake. Then came day 3. Brandon came home at 5 instead of his usual 6:30. He showered, which I could tell because his hair was wet when he came back downstairs. He changed into casual clothes. He cleaned the kitchen, something he rarely did. He opened wine to let it breathe. He was getting ready for something. For someone. At 7:15 a car pulled into our driveway. A woman got out of the passenger seat. Brandon walked out to meet her, smiling wider than he'd smiled at me in months. Even through the camera I recognized her. Courtney. I'd met her once, 6 months ago at Brandon's office holiday party. She was in her early 30s, worked in Brandon's department, and had been friendly in that overly friendly way that made my stomach tight. Brandon had introduced us casually, like she was just another co-worker. "This is Courtney. She's been handling the Morrison account with me." We'd shaken hands. She'd complimented my dress. She'd asked about my design work with genuine seeming interest. I'd smiled and made small talk, ignoring the way she touched Brandon's arm when she laughed at his jokes. Now she was getting out of a car at my house and Brandon was greeting her like she belonged there. They went inside together. Brandon walked straight to the living room camera and switched it off. Then the kitchen camera went dark. Then the hallway camera. He knew I could watch. He was hiding his affair even though he thought I was 2,000 miles away. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped my laptop. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at the blank camera screens, knowing what was happening in my house. Knowing my husband was betraying me in every room I'd carefully designed. Knowing another woman was sitting on my furniture, drinking my wine, touching my husband. I don't remember deciding to drive home. One minute I was sitting in the hotel room and the next I was in my car, driving too fast through evening traffic. I parked 3 houses down. I walked through my neighbor's yard, staying in the shadows. I used the side path to the basement door, the entrance we never used. My hands shook as I unlocked it. The basement was dark. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate around storage boxes and old furniture. At the top of the basement stairs I could hear them. Laughter. Music. The sounds of people comfortable in a space that wasn't theirs. I crept up the stairs, moving slowly so the old wood wouldn't creak. The door at the top was cracked open. Through the gap I could see into the kitchen. Brandon was opening the anniversary wine. Courtney was leaning against my counter, watching him with a smile that made me want to scream. They talked. They flirted. They moved around my kitchen like they'd done this before. Like this wasn't the first time. Like my home was their secret meeting place. I listened to my husband tell another woman that I was always working, always busy, never relaxed. I listened to him explain away our failing marriage like it was my fault. Like his cheating was justified because I cared too much about my career. I backed down the stairs before I could do something I'd regret. I made it to the bathroom and threw up, trying to be quiet even in my own house. The basement guest room became my hiding place. I sat on the small couch in the dark, documenting everything I could find on his cloud accounts. Photos. Messages. Evidence of an affair that had been going on for months. 7 months. 29 weeks. He'd been lying to me for over half a year. I heard them go upstairs to the bedroom. I heard sounds that broke something inside me that can't be fixed. I sat in that basement room all night, gathering evidence and building a plan. Because if Brandon thought he could betray me and get away with it, he didn't know me at all anymore. The woman he married might have forgiven him. Might have tried to save the marriage. Might have believed his lies if he apologized and promised to change. But that woman died the moment I watched them walk into my house together. The woman I am now has different plans. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My husband was upstairs in our bed with another woman, and I was hiding in the basement of my own house like an intruder. Every sound from above felt like a physical blow. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant laugh, every minute that passed reminded me that my marriage was ending in real time. Around 3 a.m, the house finally went silent. They'd gone to sleep. Together. In my bed. I sat on the basement couch in the dark, my phone clutched in my hands, fighting the urge to go upstairs and destroy everything. It would feel good for about 30 seconds. Then I'd be the crazy wife. The unstable woman who couldn't handle her husband's affair. I'd give him ammunition to use against me in court. No. I had to be smarter than that. I opened his cloud storage instead. Brandon kept everything synced across devices, a habit from his finance work. He needed access to files from anywhere. It made him efficient at his job. It also made his affair easy to document. I'd figured out his passwords months ago, not because I was snooping but because he used the same password for everything. His mother's maiden name plus his birth year. Simple. Predictable. The messages were all there. 7 months of conversations with Courtney. It started professionally enough. Work discussions. Project updates. But by the 2nd month things shifted. Good morning texts. Lunch invitations. Complaints about their spouses. Brandon had told her I was cold. Distant. Too focused on work to notice him anymore. He'd painted me as the villain in our marriage, the wife who cared more about her career than her husband. Courtney had eaten it up. She'd commiserated, telling him her husband was the same way. Always working, never present. They were both lonely according to their messages. Both neglected. Both deserving of happiness. The messages made me sick. Not just because of the affair but because of how they justified it. They'd created a narrative where they were the victims, where their spouses had driven them together, where their cheating was somehow noble because they'd found real connection. By month 4 they were meeting regularly. Hotels during lunch breaks. His car in empty parking lots. Once, they'd gone to a cabin 2 hours outside the city for a weekend when Brandon told me he had a work conference. I'd wished him luck at that conference. I'd texted him encouragement. I believed him. The photos were worse than the messages. Not explicit but intimate. Courtney in his car, smiling at the camera. Brandon and Courtney at a restaurant I didn't recognize, sitting too close. A selfie of them at the lake, her head on his shoulder. They looked happy. That was the part that hurt most. In those photos, Brandon looked happier than he'd looked with me in months. Maybe years. I saved everything. Screenshots of messages. Downloaded photos. Bank statements showing charges at hotels and restaurants. Credit card bills with purchases I'd never seen. Our joint savings account had taken hits too. 500 here, 300 there. Always with explanations. Car repairs, work dinners, a new laptop. But the money had gone to funding his affair. Dates with Courtney. Hotel rooms. Gifts. He'd spent our money on betraying me. By 5 in the morning, I had dozens of files organized in a hidden folder on my phone. Evidence that would hold up in court. Evidence that showed pattern and intent. Evidence that would make sure Brandon couldn't lie his way out of this. At 6, I heard movement upstairs. Footsteps in the bedroom. Water running in the bathroom. Voices too quiet to make out words. They were getting ready for work. Getting ready to go back to their regular lives, pretending nothing happened. I stayed silent in the basement, barely breathing. At 7, I heard them in the kitchen. Coffee brewing. The toaster popping. Casual morning sounds that should have been comforting but instead felt like betrayal. I should go, Courtney said, her voice carrying down through the vents. Can't have people seeing us arrive together. I'll drop you at the corner, Brandon replied. Pick up your car later. This was nice. Her voice was softer now. Intimate. I wish we didn't have to hide. Soon, Brandon said. I'm going to talk to Simone when she gets back. Tell her I want a divorce. My breath caught in my throat. Really? Courtney sounded excited. You're really going to do it? Yeah. This isn't fair to any of us. Simone deserves honesty. And I deserve to be happy. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. He was going to divorce me. He was going to leave me and make it seem like his choice. Like he was being noble by being honest. What if she fights it? Courtney asked. She won't. Simone's practical. She'll see this marriage is over. We'll split things fairly and everyone moves on. They had it all planned out. My husband and his mistress had already decided my future over breakfast in my kitchen. The front door opened and closed. Car doors slammed. An engine started, then faded down the street. Silence. I waited 10 more minutes to be absolutely sure they were gone. Then I climbed the basement stairs on shaking legs. The house smelled like coffee and Courtney's perfume. Evidence of their morning was everywhere. 2 coffee mugs in the sink. Toast crumbs on the counter. The throw blanket from the couch tossed carelessly on the floor. I walked through each room, documenting everything with my phone camera. Living room. Kitchen. Dining room. Then upstairs. The bedroom was worse. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled. Her earring sat on my nightstand next to her water glass. The bathroom counter had products I didn't recognize. Her makeup bag sat next to my skincare routine. She'd made herself at home in my space. I took pictures of everything. Then I gathered her belongings, the things she'd left behind. The earring. The makeup bag. A hair tie. A phone charger. I put them all in a plastic bag and hid it in the basement. Evidence. All of it was evidence. Then I went to work cleaning. I stripped the bed and started laundry. I wiped down counters. I opened windows to air out the house. I erased every trace of them being there together. But I couldn't erase what I knew. I spent the day in my house, the house I'd designed with so much love and hope, feeling like a ghost. This was supposed to be my home. My safe place. Brandon had turned it into a crime scene. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Missing you. House Portland. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. Great. The project is coming together. Long day though. Might turn in early tonight. His response came immediately. Get some rest. Love you. Love you. 2 words that meant nothing anymore. I sent back a heart emoji and put my phone down. The rest of the day I worked. Not on design projects but on planning my exit from this marriage. I researched divorce attorneys. I looked up property laws in our state. I calculated the value of everything we owned together. The house was in both our names, but I'd put in more down payment from my business earnings. My business was mine alone, thank goodness. I'd kept it separate from Brandon's finances, something my accountant had insisted on years ago. At the time, I thought it was unnecessary. Now I was grateful. I made lists, assets, debts, evidence, next steps, everything organized and clear. By the time evening came, I had a plan. I would stay in the basement one more night. Tomorrow morning, after Brandon left for work, I'd leave. I'd go back to my hotel and continue pretending I was in Portland. I'd give him 2 more days of freedom, 2 more days to think he was getting away with his affair. Then I'd come home on schedule, acting like nothing was wrong. I'd smile and hug him and play the loving wife while I built my case. I'd hire the best divorce attorney in Atlanta. I'd gather every piece of evidence I could find. I'd make sure Brandon couldn't spin this as a mutual split or a marriage that just didn't work out. Then when everything was ready, I'd destroy him. Not out of spite, not out of anger, but because he'd made a choice. He'd chosen to betray me. He'd chosen to bring another woman into our home. He'd chosen to plan my exit from his life while I was supposed to be working across the country. Now I choose how this ended. And it wouldn't end with me being the victim. It wouldn't end with Brandon and Courtney riding off into the sunset while I picked up the pieces. It would end with me taking back every piece of power Brandon thought was his. I fell asleep that night on the basement couch, fully dressed, my phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. Tomorrow the real work would begin. Morning came too early. I woke up on the basement couch with my neck cramping and my phone battery at 15%. Sunlight filtered through the small basement windows, dust particles floating in the beams. Upstairs I heard Brandon moving around, getting ready for work. Same routine he'd followed for years. Shower. Coffee. Like nothing had changed. I stayed completely still, barely breathing until I heard his car start in the driveway. Heard him back out. Heard the engine fade down the street. Only then did I move. My body ached from 2 nights of not really sleeping. My head pounded. My eyes felt dry and swollen. But none of that mattered. I had work to do. I climbed the stairs slowly, every muscle protesting. The house was empty and quiet, morning light making everything look normal. Clean. Like a home where nothing bad had happened. But I knew better now. Brandon's laptop sat on the dining room table. He'd forgotten it, or more likely left it on purpose since he had his work computer at the office. This laptop was personal. The one he used at home for email and banking and apparently conducting an affair. I opened it. No password. He'd stopped locking it months ago, probably because I'd never given him a reason not to trust me. The irony wasn't lost on me. His email was already open. I scrolled through weeks of messages, looking for anything related to Courtney. Most of it was boring work stuff. Meetings, reports, project updates. Then I found a folder labeled C. Just the letter C. Hidden in his personal folders like he thought being vague made it less obvious. Inside were dozens of emails. Some were forwards of their work messages, creating a private record. Others were longer, more personal. They'd been using email in addition to texts, probably because it felt more legitimate. More like real correspondence between adults instead of teenagers sneaking around. I read through them methodically, taking screenshots of everything. One email from 3 months ago stood out. Brandon, I know this is complicated. I know we both have obligations. But what we have is real. When I'm with you, I feel seen for the first time in years. My husband barely notices I exist. And from what you've told me, Simone is the same way with you. We deserve happiness. We deserve to feel wanted. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I don't want to lose this. Don't want to lose you. See. Brandon's response, I feel the same way. Being with you reminds me what it's like to be excited about life. Simone and I are like roommates who occasionally talk. There's no passion anymore. No connection. I've been thinking about what comes next. About how to handle this without destroying everything. But I know I can't keep living like this. You make me feel alive again. B. I had to close the laptop and walk away. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. I paced the living room, breathing deep, trying not to scream. They'd convinced themselves they were justified. They'd built this whole story where they were the victims of neglectful spouses, where their affair was some kind of salvation. Where I was the problem because I worked hard and built a successful business. After a few minutes, I went back to the laptop. I had to finish this. Had to get all the evidence before Brandon realized I knew. I found bank statements next. Our joint checking account, which I rarely looked at because I used my business account for most things. Brandon had been pulling cash regularly. 300 here, 500 there. Always with ATM withdrawals that couldn't be traced to specific purchases. I cross-referenced the dates with his calendar. Every withdrawal coincided with days he'd supposedly worked late or had after-work meetings. He'd been using our money to fund his affair. Money we'd saved together for our future. Money that was supposed to go toward the life we were building. I photographed every statement, every transaction, every lie. Then I checked his credit card. The one he said was just for work expenses that he'd pay off every month. It had a balance of $8,000. $8,000 of charges at hotels and restaurants and stores I'd never been to. One charge was for jewelry. $1,500 at a boutique in Buckhead. I'd never gotten jewelry from Brandon. Not even for our anniversary last year. He bought jewelry for Courtney. I documented everything. Then I did something that felt both necessary and invasive. I installed monitoring software on his laptop. The kind that tracks keystrokes and takes screenshots and records everything. The kind that was probably illegal, but I didn't care anymore. If Brandon was planning my divorce, I was planning my defense. Next, I went through the house systematically. Not to clean this time, but to search. I looked in drawers and closets and boxes. I checked coat pockets and briefcases. I searched his car, which was parked in the garage because he'd carpooled with Courtney yesterday. In the glove compartment, I found receipts. Dinner at expensive restaurants. A weekend trip to Savannah I'd known nothing about. Hotel rooms. Flowers. In the trunk was a gym bag I'd never seen. Inside were clothes and toiletries. A change of everything he'd need to freshen up after spending time somewhere he shouldn't be. I photographed it all. Every receipt. Every item. Every piece of evidence that showed how planned this affair was. How deliberate. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a sustained, intentional betrayal that had been going on for months. By afternoon, I had enough evidence to bury him. But I wasn't done yet. I called my office from my real phone, the one Brandon could track if he tried. I left a voicemail for my assistant saying I was extending my Portland trip by a day. Design changes, I said. The client wanted revisions. I'd be back Friday as planned, just one day later than expected. Then I called my best friend Paige from a burner phone I'd bought last week at a convenience store. Cash purchase. No record. "It's me," I said when she answered. "Oh, thank goodness. Are you okay? Did you find anything?" "Everything. I found everything." I told her all of it. The affair. Courtney. The messages and photos and receipts. Brandon's plan to divorce me. The way they'd been using my house while I was supposedly gone. Paige was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to destroy him." "Simone." "Not violently. Legally. I'm going to take everything he thought was his and make sure he never does this to anyone else." "You need a lawyer." "I know. I need the best divorce attorney in Atlanta. Someone who specializes in cases like this. My cousin went through a divorce last year. Her attorney was incredible. Patricia Owens. Took her husband for everything after he tried to hide assets. Patricia Owens. I wrote the name down. Can you get me her number? I'll text it to you. But Simone, are you sure about this? Once you start legal proceedings, there's no going back. There's already no going back. Brandon made sure of that when he decided to bring his mistress into our home. Okay. What do you need from me? Be ready to be my witness if this goes to court. You're the one who suggested the test. You knew something was wrong. I might need you to testify to that. Of course. Anything you need. And Paige? Don't tell anyone yet. Not even Travis. I need to control how this information gets out. I won't say a word. Promise. We hung up. 5 minutes later, she texted me Patricia Owens' number from her phone. I called immediately. The receptionist answered on the second ring. Professional. Efficient. I explained I needed a consultation about a divorce. That I had evidence of infidelity. That I needed someone who could help me protect my assets. "Ms. Owens has an opening tomorrow at 10, the receptionist said. Can you make that? Yes. I gave my real name. My real number. This wasn't something I could hide. If Brandon somehow found out I'd called a divorce attorney before he could talk to me, so be it. Let him scramble. Let him panic. After the call, I sat in my living room and looked around at everything I'd built. This house. This life. This marriage that turned out to be fiction. Brandon thought he was going to divorce me on his terms. He thought he'd sit me down, explain that we'd grown apart, and suggest we split things amicably. He probably had a speech prepared. Something about how we'd both be happier apart. How this was nobody's fault. How we could both move on with dignity. He had no idea what was coming. I spent the rest of the day organizing evidence on my laptop. I created a detailed timeline of the affair based on messages and receipts and photos. I made spreadsheets of financial information, showing exactly how much money Brandon had spent on Courtney using our joint funds. I documented everything in a way that was clear and undeniable. The kind of documentation that would hold up in court. The kind that would make any judge see exactly what Brandon had done. By evening I was exhausted. But I wasn't finished. I had one more night to get through in this house before I could leave and wait out the rest of my fake trip. I ordered dinner using a food delivery app, having it left on the porch so I wouldn't have to interact with anyone. I ate in the basement, the only place that didn't feel contaminated by Brandon's betrayal. Around 8 my phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Hope your day was productive. Mine was long. Missing you. Can't wait for you to be home. Such a caring husband. Such concern. Such lies. I texted back. Miss you too. Almost done here. See you soon. Then I opened my laptop and continued building my case. Because Brandon might think he was in control of this situation, but he was wrong. I was the one calling the shots now. And by the time I was done, he'd realized that testing him was the kindest thing I could have done. Because it gave me time to prepare. Time to plan. Time to make sure that when this marriage ended, I'd be the one walking away with everything that mattered. Patricia Owens' office was in a high-rise building in Midtown, the kind with marble floors and expensive art in the lobby. I arrived 15 minutes early for my 10 o'clock appointment, wearing my best business suit and carrying a laptop bag full of evidence. The receptionist offered me coffee. I accepted, needing the caffeine after another restless night. I'd finally left my house yesterday afternoon, going back to my hotel to maintain the illusion that I was still in Portland. I'd sent Brandon a photo of the Seattle skyline I'd found online, telling him the project was going well. He'd sent back a heart emoji. Miss Montgomery? A woman appeared in the waiting area. She was in her 50s, wearing a sharp gray suit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. I'm Patricia Owens. Please come back. Her office was exactly what I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Mahogany desk. Bookshelves full of legal texts. Diplomas and awards on the walls. This was a woman who won cases. Thank you for seeing me on short notice, I said, sitting in the chair across from her desk. The receptionist mentioned you have evidence of infidelity. Tell me everything. So I did. I started with the past 6 months of distance, the signs something was wrong. I explained the test, the fake trip, discovering Brandon with Courtney in our home. I showed her the photos, the messages, the bank statements. I walked her through 7 months of documented affair. Patricia listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and studied me. You've done excellent work documenting this, she said. Most people who come to me have suspicions but no proof. You have enough evidence here to make this divorce very straightforward. I don't want straightforward. I want everything. Define everything. I want the house. I want my business protected. I want him to pay back every cent he spent on his affair from our joint accounts. And I want to make sure Courtney faces consequences too. Patricia's expression didn't change, but I saw something like approval in her eyes. The house might be complicated since it's in both your names. But given that you contributed more to the down payment and your income has been higher, we can make a strong case. Your business is already separate, which is good. The money he spent can be recovered in the settlement as dissipation of marital assets. And Courtney? We can't sue her directly for breaking up your marriage. Georgia doesn't have alienation of affection laws. But if she works with your husband, there might be workplace policy violations. Sexual harassment clauses. Ethics violations. That's a different avenue. I hadn't thought of that. His firm has strict policies about workplace relationships. Then we make sure his employer knows about it. Document that as well. Do you know if Courtney is married? Yes. I found her social media. She has a husband, Nathan. They've been married 5 years. Patricia nodded. Then her husband deserves to know what's happening too. Not for revenge, but because he has a right to make informed decisions about his own marriage. I'd already planned to tell him. Good. But wait until after we file. We don't want anything looking like you're harassing them before legal proceedings begin. Once we file, you have every right to ensure all affected parties are informed. We spent the next hour going through strategy. Patricia explained the divorce process in Georgia. How long it would take. What to expect. What my rights were. When are you planning to tell your husband you're filing? She asked. I'm supposed to return from Portland tomorrow. I was thinking I'd come home, act normal for a few days, then have him served. I'd suggest a different approach. Come home. Act normal. Gather any final pieces of evidence you need. Then leave and have him served after you're already gone. Don't be there when he gets the papers. Don't give him a chance to manipulate the situation or try to convince you to change your mind. You think he'd try that? Most people do. They panic. They apologize. They promise to change. They make it very difficult for the betrayed spouse to move forward. If you're not there, he can't do that. It made sense. So I come home tomorrow, stay a few days, then leave and have him served. Exactly. In the meantime, I'll prepare the paperwork. We'll file for divorce citing adultery, which affects asset division in Georgia. We'll include all your documentation. We'll request the house, reimbursement for dissipated funds and attorney fees. How much is this going to cost? Patricia named a figure that made me wince, but I'd expected it. Good lawyers weren't cheap. I'll need a retainer today. We can discuss payment plans if needed. I can pay the retainer. I brought my business checkbook. My business was successful enough that I had savings separate from Brandon. Money he couldn't touch. We handled the financial details. I signed forms. I authorized Patricia to represent me. By the time I left her office an hour later, the wheels were in motion. There was no going back now. I spent the rest of the day preparing for the next phase. I went to a bank branch across town, one where Brandon and I didn't have accounts, and opened a new personal checking and savings account. Just in my name. I began transferring money from our joint account to my new account. Not everything, that would be too obvious. But half. Money I'd contributed. Money I'd earned. Then I contacted my business clients. I had 5 major projects running. I sent each client a carefully worded email explaining that I was making some changes to my business structure. I was separating from my previous business entity and forming a new LLC. All current projects would continue without interruption. The only change was the business name and payment information. I didn't mention Brandon. Didn't mention divorce. Just presented it as a normal business evolution. 4 clients responded within hours, confirming they were happy to continue working with me under the new structure. The 5th called me directly. "Simone, is everything okay?" asked Robert, owner of the hotel chain I'd been working with for 2 years. "Everything's fine. Just some restructuring. If you're having problems with a partner, you should know we hired you, not your company. Your vision is what we want. Whatever you need to do to protect that, do it." "Thank you, Robert. That means a lot. You're one of the best designers we've worked with. We're not losing you over paperwork." After that call, I felt lighter. My business was safe. My income was protected. Brandon couldn't touch any of it. Next, I went apartment hunting. I couldn't stay with Paige, her house was too small with 2 kids. I couldn't stay at a hotel indefinitely. I needed my own space. I found a place in Virginia Highland. A 2-bedroom condo on the 3rd floor of a renovated building. Hardwood floors. Big windows. Walking distance to restaurants and shops. Nothing like the house I was leaving, but it was mine. Just mine. The landlord was willing to do a month-to-month lease with the understanding that I'd sign a year lease once I was sure. I paid first and last month's rent plus deposit. Cash from my new bank account. I'd move in next week after I came home from my fake trip and played the loving wife for a few days. That evening, I called Paige from my hotel room. "How did it go?" she asked immediately. "I hired her. Patricia Owens is representing me. We're filing next week." "Oh my goodness. This is really happening. It's really happening. And Paige, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to help me move. Next Thursday. After Brandon goes to work. I'm going to pack everything I want to keep and be gone before he gets home. Then Patricia will have him served at his office. I'll be there. Travis can watch the kids. What about furniture? I'm leaving most of it. It's not worth fighting over. I'll take my clothes, my personal items, my design equipment. Everything else stays. You designed that whole house. You put so much work into it. And Brandon ruined it. I don't want anything that reminds me of him. I'll start over." Paige was quiet for a moment. "You're really strong, you know that?" "I don't feel strong. I feel angry. Anger can be strength if you channel it right. And you're channeling it perfectly." After we hung up, I sat on the hotel bed and stared at my laptop screen. At the folders full of evidence. At the timeline I'd built. At 7 months of documented betrayal. Tomorrow I'd go home. I'd hug my husband. I'd tell him about my fake trip to Portland. I'd sleep in our bed like nothing was wrong. Then in a few days I'd walk away and never look back. Brandon thought he was planning our divorce on his terms. He had no idea I'd already filed the papers. He had no idea I'd protected my business and my money. He had no idea I'd secured my own place to live. He thought he was in control. But I'd taken control back the moment I decided to test him. And now I was going to finish what I'd started. I parked at the airport Friday afternoon, exactly when my fake flight from Portland was supposed to land. I sat in the arrival cell phone lot for 20 minutes, watching people reunite with their loved ones. Hugs and smiles and genuine happiness. My phone buzzed. Brandon texting that he was circling, looking for me. I texted back my terminal and walked inside with my suitcase. The same suitcase I'd been keeping in my hotel room all week. I stood at the arrival's curb and waited. Brandon's car pulled up. He got out, smiling, and pulled me into a hug. "Welcome home, baby. It's good to be back." I hugged him back, forcing myself not to stiffen, not to pull away. He took my suitcase and loaded it in the trunk. We got in the car. I buckled my seatbelt and looked out the window as we drove, letting him talk. "How was Portland?" "Beautiful. The hotel project is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see your designs." "Did you take pictures?" "Hundreds. I'll show you everything." Such an easy lie. I'd spent hours creating a fake portfolio of the imaginary Portland hotel. Photos I'd pulled from architecture websites and edited to look like my work. Notes and sketches that looked legitimate. If Brandon asked, I had everything ready. But he didn't really ask. He wasn't actually interested in my work. He just needed to maintain the facade of being a supportive husband. "I missed you," he said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "I missed you too." Another lie. So many lies between us now. At home, Brandon carried my suitcase inside. The house smelled like he'd cooked. Pasta sauce and garlic bread. He'd gone to effort to make it seem like he'd spent the week missing me. "I made dinner," he announced. "Your favorite." "That's so sweet." I smiled at him, playing my part. "Let me change first. I've been in airports all day." I went upstairs to our bedroom. The room where I'd found him with Courtney exactly 1 week ago. The sheets were fresh. The room was clean. No evidence of his affair. But I knew better. I'd seen everything. I had photos and videos and messages proving what he'd done in this room. I changed into comfortable clothes and went back downstairs. Brandon had set the table. Candles. What? He was trying so hard. We ate dinner together. He asked about Portland. I told him my practice stories. The client was difficult but brilliant. The space had great potential. The contractors were professional. All fiction, delivered smoothly because I'd rehearsed it. Brandon told me about his week. Work was busy. The Henderson account was moving forward. He'd gone to the gym a few times. He'd missed having me around. No mention of Courtney. No mention of spending 3 nights with another woman in our bed. Just casual conversation like nothing had happened. After dinner, we watched television together on the couch. Brandon put his arm around me. I leaned into him, fighting nausea. This was the man I'd loved for 8 years. This was the man I'd built a life with. This was the man who'd betrayed me and was now sitting here pretending everything was fine. Around 10 we went to bed. Brandon kissed me goodnight. I rolled onto my side, facing away from him, and closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. I lay there, listening to his breathing even out, knowing I had to get through 3 more days of this before I could leave. 3 more days of pretending. 3 more days of lies. But I could do it. I'd already proven I could do hard things. The weekend was worse than I expected. Brandon was overly attentive, trying to reconnect after my trip. He suggested we go out to brunch on Saturday. Take a walk at the park on Sunday. Watch our favorite show together. He was performing the role of good husband, trying to ease his guilt. I played along. We went to brunch at a trendy place in Inman Park. We walked around Piedmont Park in the afternoon sunshine. We sat together on the couch Sunday evening, watching a show neither of us was really paying attention to. The whole time I was documenting. I'd installed monitoring software on Brandon's phone and laptop. I could see every text, every email, every search. He was still messaging Courtney. Carefully. Using vague language. But I could read between the lines. Saturday night after I'd gone to bed, he texted her. "She's home. Everything's fine. Miss you though." Courtney's response, "I miss you too. When can we talk?" "Soon. Just need to give it a few days. Let things settle." Sunday afternoon, "How was your weekend?" "Long. But we're going to talk this week. I promise. This is almost over." He thought he was being careful. He thought I had no idea. Monday morning, Brandon left for work at his usual time. I waited until his car disappeared down the street, then I called Patricia. "I'm ready." I want to move out Thursday and have him served Friday. I'll have the papers ready. The process server will deliver them to his office Friday morning. What do I do until then? Act normal. Don't give him any indication you're leaving. Pack only what you can move quickly. Have someone help you who you trust completely. My best friend Paige is helping. Good. Remove anything of sentimental or financial value. Documents, jewelry, personal items. Leave the furniture unless it has significant value. Most of it can stay. I don't want it anyway. Then Thursday morning you leave. I'll call you when he's been served and we'll proceed from there. After the call, I started organizing. I went through the house making lists of what to take. My clothes, my design equipment and portfolios, my personal documents and photos, my grandmother's jewelry, a few pieces of art I'd bought before marrying Brandon. Everything else could stay. The furniture I'd chosen, the dishes I'd registered for at our wedding, the decorations I'd carefully curated. All of it felt tainted now. All of it reminded me of the life I'd thought I had. I'd rather start over than keep any of it. Tuesday I went to my office. My assistant noticed immediately that something was off. You okay, Simone? You seem distracted. Just tired from traveling. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I was holding myself together with sheer willpower, counting down the hours until I could leave. I met with clients. I reviewed designs. I made decisions about projects. All the while, part of my brain was planning my exit, calculating what I needed to do, making sure nothing was forgotten. Tuesday evening, Brandon suggested we have date night. Go to our favorite restaurant. Reconnect after my week away. I agreed because refusing would seem strange. We went to the Italian place where we'd celebrated our anniversary 3 years ago. We sat at a corner table eating pasta and drinking wine, pretending to be a happy couple. Brandon reached across the table and took my hand. I'm glad you're home. Me too. I've been thinking. We should take a real vacation. Just the two of us. Go somewhere tropical. Relax. A vacation. He wanted to take a vacation with me while planning to divorce me. The audacity was almost impressive. That sounds nice. We can look at options. He smiled, satisfied. He thought everything was back to normal. He thought he had time to figure out how to end our marriage on his terms. He had 2 days. Wednesday was my last full day in the house. I went through each room one final time, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. I took photos of everything, documenting the state I'd left it in. Proof that I hadn't destroyed anything or stolen marital property. I boxed up my belongings, hiding the boxes in the basement where Brandon wouldn't see them. Paige would help me load them Thursday morning. That evening, Brandon came home early with flowers. For my beautiful wife. I put them in a vase, thanking him, feeling sick. We ate dinner together. We watched television. We talked about nothing important. Then we went to bed and I lay there one last time in the bed I'd shared with him for years. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow Brandon would go to work thinking everything was fine. And I'd be gone before he came home. My phone was clutched in my hand under the pillow, an alarm set for 6 a.m. Early enough to pack everything before Brandon woke up. I didn't sleep at all that night. I counted the hours, counted the minutes, waited for the alarm that would signal the beginning of the end. When it finally went off, I was already awake. I silenced it quickly and slipped out of bed. Brandon stirred but didn't wake. He rolled over, taking up the space where I'd been lying. I got dressed quietly. Jeans, t-shirt, comfortable shoes for moving boxes. Then I went downstairs and texted Paige, "It's time." Her response came immediately, "On my way." The sun was just starting to rise when Paige pulled into my driveway. We worked quickly and quietly, loading boxes into her SUV. My clothes, my equipment, my personal items. Everything I'd carefully packed over the past few days. It took 3 trips to get everything to my new condo. By 8 o'clock we were done. The house looked normal, like I'd just stepped out for errands. But I wasn't coming back. From my new condo, I texted Brandon, "Had to run some errands. Back later." Then I turned off my phone's location sharing. He could no longer track where I was. "What now?" Paige asked, sitting on the floor of my empty living room surrounded by boxes. "Now we wait. Patricia will call tomorrow when he's been served. Then the real fight begins." Paige squeezed my hand. "You're doing the right thing." I know. And I did know. This was right. This was necessary. Brandon had made his choices. Now he'd face the consequences. I'd spent a week pretending. A week lying. A week being the wife he thought he still had. Tomorrow he'd learn the truth. And there would be no going back. Friday morning started like any other Friday for Brandon. He got up at 6:30. He showered and dressed in his usual work suit. He made coffee. He texted me asking when I'd be home from wherever I'd gone yesterday. I didn't respond. I was sitting in my new condo, coffee in hand, waiting for Patricia's call. The process server was scheduled to deliver the divorce papers to Brandon's office at 9 a.m. At 8:45 my phone rang. "The server is on his way," Patricia said. "He'll deliver the papers directly to Brandon at his desk. Standard procedure." "What happens after that?" "Brandon will call you. Probably multiple times. Don't answer. Let him leave voicemails. Let him panic. If he shows up at your old address, he'll find you gone. He doesn't know your new address yet. When does he find out where I am? When we're ready to tell him. For now, let him realize what's happening. Let him understand that you're in control of this situation, not him." At 9:15 my phone started ringing. Brandon's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. Voicemail. A third time. A fourth. By the fifth call I was shaking. I wanted to answer. Wanted to hear what he had to say. But Patricia's advice was clear. Don't engage. Not yet. At 9:30 my phone buzzed with a text. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession. "Simone, please call me. We need to talk. I don't understand what's happening. Please. Just answer your phone. Where are you?" I read each message without responding. Let him wonder. Let him panic. Paige was with me sitting on my couch, providing moral support. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine. You look like you're about to throw up." "Maybe I am. But I'm still fine." My phone rang again. This time it was Patricia. "Brandon's attorney just contacted me. He hired someone fast. They want to schedule a meeting to discuss settlement terms." "Already?" "Apparently the evidence you provided was quite compelling. His attorney knows they don't have a strong position. They're trying to minimize damage." "What kind of settlement are they offering?" "Nothing yet. They just want to talk. Feel out what you're asking for. See if there's room to negotiate before this gets ugly." "It's already ugly." "True. But it can get uglier." Court. Public record. His employer finding out about the affair. Courtney's husband finding out. They want to avoid all of that. "What do you think I should do?" "Let me handle it. I'll schedule a meeting for next week. In the meantime, Brandon is going to try to contact you. He's going to apologize. He's going to promise to fix things. Don't believe him." "I won't." "Good. Because this is when things get difficult. This is when he'll try to manipulate you emotionally. When he'll remind you of all the good times. When he'll make you feel guilty for ending the marriage." "I'm not ending it." "He ended it when he brought Courtney into our bed." "Exactly. Remember that. Every time he calls, every time he texts, remember what he did." After Patricia hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. Brandon had called 12 times. Sent 20 texts. Each message was more desperate than the last. "I'm sorry. Please let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. I love you. Don't do this. We can fix this." Empty words. All of them. Lies he told himself to feel better about what he'd done. Around noon, Paige had to leave to pick up her kids from school. "You going to be okay alone?" "Yeah. I need to start unpacking anyway." After she left, I stood in the middle of my new living room, surrounded by boxes, and felt the weight of everything crash down. This was real. I'd actually left. I'd filed for divorce. I'd blown up my entire life. For a moment, I let myself feel it. The grief, the anger, the fear. I sat on the floor and cried, letting 8 years of marriage pour out in tears. Then I wiped my face, stood up, and started unpacking. I wasn't going to let Brandon's betrayal break me. I was going to use it to build something better. That evening, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Simone? This is Nathan. Courtney's husband." My breath caught. "How did you get this number?" "Your attorney gave it to me. Said you might want to talk." "Is it true? Did Courtney and your husband have an affair?" I sat down on my couch. "Yes, it's true. I have evidence. Photos, messages, everything." He was quiet for a long moment. "How long?" 7 months that I know of. Maybe longer. 7 months. His voice cracked. "She's been lying to me for 7 months." "I'm sorry." "I know that doesn't help, but I am sorry." "Did you know? Before the divorce papers?" "I suspected something was wrong. I tested my husband by pretending to go on a business trip. I came home early and found them together. In my house. In my bed. Nathan made a sound like he'd been punched. Oh God. I documented everything. If you want copies of the evidence, I can have my attorney send them to you. You deserve to know the truth. Yes, please. I need to see it. Nathan, I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because they don't get to destroy our lives and face no consequences. They made choices. Now they get to live with them. Thank you for telling me. Courtney came home last night acting weird. Said she had to work late. I didn't question it. I never question her. His voice broke completely. I should have questioned her. This isn't your fault. You trusted your wife. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. We talked for a few more minutes. I gave him Patricia's contact information. I told him about workplace policies at Brandon's firm. I shared everything I knew because Nathan deserved the same chance I had. The chance to control how his marriage ended. After we hung up, I felt something like satisfaction. Not happiness. Not peace. But satisfaction that the truth was spreading. That both Brandon and Courtney were going to face consequences. Over the next few days, everything happened fast. Nathan filed for divorce on Monday. He also contacted Brandon's firm with evidence of the affair, pointing out that Brandon and Courtney had violated company policy by having a sexual relationship between employees without disclosure. Brandon's firm launched an investigation. By Wednesday, both Brandon and Courtney were on administrative leave pending review. Patricia called to update me. Brandon's attorney is desperate to settle. The firm is likely going to fire him. His reputation is destroyed. He wants this divorce finalized quickly so he can move on. What are they offering? He keeps his retirement accounts. You keep the house. You get reimbursed for all the money he spent on the affair. He pays your attorney fees. And you both walk away clean. That's it? No fight. He doesn't want to fight. He wants this over. He's trying to salvage what's left of his career and his dignity. Tell him I accept. But I have one more condition. What's that? I want a clause in the divorce decree that says he committed adultery. Not just that we're divorcing. Specific language about his affair. Public record of what he did. Patricia was quiet for a moment. His attorney won't like that. I don't care what his attorney likes. That's my condition. He admits what he did in legal documents, or we go to court and I make it even more public. I'll push for it. Given his position, he'll probably agree. She was right. Brandon's attorney called back 2 hours later accepting the terms. By the end of the week, the settlement was drafted. All that remained was signatures and a judge's approval. I'd won. I'd gotten the house. I'd gotten my money back. I'd gotten acknowledgement of his betrayal in legal documents. And I'd gotten to walk away without looking back. Brandon tried one last time to contact me. He sent an email through his attorney asking if we could meet. If we could talk before finalizing everything. I wrote back through Patricia. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choices. Now live with them. I never heard from him again. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in my newly furnished condo and finally felt like I could breathe again. The place was coming together. I'd bought furniture that was mine alone. Colors I chose. Pieces that had no history with Brandon. My bedroom was painted a soft blue that made me feel calm. My office was set up with everything I needed to run my business. My living room was cozy and bright. This was my space. My life. Mine. The divorce had been easier than I expected once Brandon realized he had no leverage. He'd signed everything Patricia put in front of him. We'd gone to court once for the final hearing. The judge had looked over our agreement, asked if we both understood the terms and signed the decree. 15 minutes. 8 years of marriage ended in 15 minutes. Brandon had looked awful at that hearing. Thinner. Tired. He tried to catch my eye, but I'd looked straight ahead. There was nothing left to say to him. As we left the courthouse, going in opposite directions, I'd felt something lift off my shoulders. Relief. Freedom. The weight of his betrayal finally releasing me. My business had grown since the divorce. Word had spread about my new company, and clients were calling with projects. I'd hired 2 more designers to help with the workload. I'd rented a small office space in Ponce City Market. Things were good. Better than good. They were thriving. Paige had been right all along. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you opens the door to something better. But the fallout for Brandon and Courtney had been severe. Brandon's firm had fired them both. The investigation had shown they'd violated multiple policies, including using company time and resources for their affair. They'd exchanged emails on company servers. They'd used company credit cards for dinners together. They'd been sloppy and careless. Brandon had found another job eventually, but it was a step down. Smaller firm. lower pay. His reputation in Atlanta's financial community was ruined. Courtney had it worse. She'd been blackballed from most of the firms in the city. Her divorce from Nathan had been bitter and public. She'd lost her house, her savings, and custody arrangements with her stepchildren from Nathan's previous marriage. I felt no sympathy for either of them. They'd made choices. Now they lived with consequences. Nathan and I had become unlikely friends. We'd met for coffee a few times, bonding over our shared experience. He was a good man who'd been blindsided by someone he trusted. "I'm dating again," he told me over coffee one afternoon. "Nothing serious. Just trying to remember what it's like to have someone be honest with me." "That's good. You deserve that." "You dating?" "No. Not yet. I'm not ready." And I wasn't. The idea of trusting someone with my heart again felt impossible. I was content being alone. Content building my business and my life without depending on anyone else. But then I met Jerome. It was at a design conference in Nashville. I'd presented on sustainable interior design in commercial spaces. He'd presented on integrating architecture and interior design in hotel projects. After my presentation, he'd approached me. "That was brilliant. Your approach to sustainability without sacrificing aesthetics is exactly what the industry needs." "Thank you. Your presentation on hotel design was impressive too." We'd ended up having dinner that night. Just professional conversation. Talking about projects and clients and the challenges of running design businesses. But there was something else there too. Something I wasn't ready to name. We exchanged business cards. Said we should collaborate sometime. Then I went back to Atlanta and tried not to think about him. But Jerome didn't let it go. He called a week later with an actual project. A boutique hotel chain expanding into the Southeast. They needed both an architect and an interior designer. Would I be interested in collaborating? I said yes because it was a good business opportunity. Not because I wanted to see him again. At least that's what I told myself. We met to discuss the project at a coffee shop in Midtown. Professional. Business only. But by the end of the meeting, we'd barely talked about the hotel at all. We talked about everything else. Our backgrounds. Our families. Our dreams for our businesses. "Can I be honest?" Jerome said as we were leaving. "I asked you to collaborate because it's a good project. But also because I wanted an excuse to see you again. I should have shut it down. Should have said I wasn't interested in anything beyond professional collaboration. Instead I said, I'm glad you did." We started slow. Coffee meetings that turned into lunch meetings. Lunch meetings that turned into dinner. Dinner that turned into walks through Piedmont Park talking about everything and nothing. Jerome knew about my divorce. I'd been honest from the start. "I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm not ready." "That's okay. I'm not pushing. I just like spending time with you." And I liked spending time with him. He was kind without being weak. Confident without being arrogant. He listened when I talked about my business challenges. He celebrated my successes. He didn't try to fix me or save me or make me into someone I wasn't. He just liked me for who I was right now. Divorce and all. 3 months after meeting Jerome, I was sitting in my condo one evening when Paige called. "Have you seen Brandon's social media?" she asked. "No. I blocked him everywhere." "Why?" "He posted something. You should look." "Paige, I don't care what he posts. Trust me. Look." I unblocked him on one platform and pulled up his page. The most recent post was a long caption about lessons learned and growth and becoming a better person. "I've made mistakes that hurt people I love," it read. "I'm working every day to be better. To understand why I made the choices I did. To heal and move forward. If you've been hurt by my actions, I'm truly sorry. All I can do now is try to be worthy of forgiveness." No mention of what he'd actually done. No real accountability. Just vague words about mistakes and growth. I laughed. Actually laughed. He's trying to rehab his image. "Are you okay?" Paige asked. "I'm fine. Better than fine. He can post whatever he wants. It doesn't change what he did. It doesn't change that I'm happier now than I was with him." "You do seem happier." "I am. I really am." And it was true. Looking around my condo at the life I'd built from scratch, I felt genuinely happy. Not happy despite the divorce. Happy because of it. Because it had forced me to stand on my own. To remember my strength. To choose myself. "How's Jerome?" Paige asked, changing the subject. "Good. We're taking things slow. Do you see it going somewhere?" "Maybe. Eventually. Right now, I'm just enjoying having someone who treats me with respect." "You deserve that." After we hung up, I looked at Brandon's post one more time. Then I blocked him again and deleted the app. He wasn't part of my life anymore. He was part of my past. A past that had taught me valuable lessons. About trust. About strength. About knowing my worth. I'd been tested by my husband's betrayal. And I'd passed. Not by forgiving him or taking him back. Not by letting him explain away his choices. But by choosing myself. By protecting myself. By building a life that didn't include someone who could hurt me that way. I'd wanted revenge and I got it. Legal. Complete. Satisfying. But what I got that was even better than revenge was freedom. Freedom from a marriage that was killing me slowly. Freedom from someone who didn't value me. Freedom to build something new. My phone buzzed. A text from Jerome, "Want to grab dinner tonight? There's a new restaurant I want to try." I smiled and texted back, yes. Because I was ready. Not ready to jump into something serious. Not ready to forget what Brandon had done. But ready to take a chance. Ready to see where things could go with someone who saw me and valued me and treated me like I mattered. The revenge story was over. Now it was time for the next chapter. 6 months after my divorce, I stood in the lobby of a newly opened boutique hotel in Savannah, looking at my work come to life. The space was exactly as I'd envisioned it. Soft colors that felt warm without being overwhelming. Natural materials that brought the outside in. Lighting that changed throughout the day, creating different moods. Furniture that was both beautiful and functional. This was my design. My vision. Mine alone. Jerome stood beside me, admiring the architectural details he'd created that complemented my interior work perfectly. We make a good team. We do. The hotel owner, Robert, walked over with a smile. "Simone, Jerome, this is incredible. Better than I imagined. We're already getting calls about people wanting to book based on the photos alone." "I'm glad you're happy with it," I said. "Happy? I'm thrilled. And I want you both for the next 3 properties we're opening. If you're available." Jerome and I exchanged glances. "We're available." After Robert walked away to greet other guests at the opening event, Jerome turned to me. 3 more hotels. That's a lot of time working together. Is that a problem?" "Not at all. I like working with you. I like being around you." He paused. "I like you." My heart did something complicated. Something that felt like fear and hope mixed together. "Jerome, I know. You're not ready for anything serious. You've told me that from the start. And I respect it. But Simone, it's been 6 months. At some point, you're going to have to decide if you're going to let what Brandon did control the rest of your life." "That's not fair." "Maybe not. But it's true." He wasn't angry. Just honest. "I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not even asking you to call me your boyfriend. I'm just asking if you can see a future where you trust someone again. Where you let someone in." I looked around the hotel lobby. At everything I'd built. At the success I'd created from the ruins of my marriage. "I can see a future," I said slowly. "I'm living in it. I have my business. My condo. My independence. That's enough." "Is it?" The question hung between us. Was it enough? Was being alone forever really what I wanted? Or was I just scared? "I don't know," I admitted. "I know I'm not ready for what you're asking." "Okay." Jerome nodded. "Then I'll wait. Because you're worth waiting for." He walked away to talk to some people from the architectural magazine covering the opening. I stood there, feeling complicated things I wasn't ready to name. Later that evening, the hotel threw a celebration dinner for everyone who'd worked on the project. I sat between my 2 assistant designers, watching Jerome across the table laugh with the contractor. He caught my eye and smiled. Not pushing. Not demanding. Just there. Paige had been right months ago when she said anger could be strength if channeled right. I channeled my anger at Brandon into building something amazing. Into protecting myself. Into becoming someone stronger than I was before. But maybe she was right about something else too. Maybe at some point I had to stop being angry. Had to stop protecting myself. Had to risk being hurt again because that's what living actually meant. Not yet though. Not tonight. Tonight I was going to celebrate my success. My project. My vision brought to life. The rest could wait. A week later, I was in my office when my assistant knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's personal." I looked up from the design plans I was reviewing. "Who?" He didn't give his name. Just said you'd want to see him. I walked out to the reception area and stopped. Brandon was standing there, looking uncomfortable and out of place. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out colder than I intended. "I needed to talk to you. You blocked me everywhere." "That was intentional." "I know. But please just 5 minutes. Then I'll leave and never bother you again." I should have said no. Should have had my assistant call security. But part of me was curious. What could Brandon possibly have to say that mattered now? 5 minutes. In the conference room. We went into the conference room. I didn't close the door. Didn't want him thinking this was private. My assistant could see us through the glass walls. What do you want? I asked, staying standing. Brandon sat down, looking smaller than I remembered. I wanted to apologize. A real apology. Not the vague social media stuff. Not through lawyers. Face to face. Okay. Apologize. I'm sorry. For everything. For the affair. For bringing Courtney into our home. For using our money on her. For planning to divorce you without having the courage to be honest. For all of it. I waited. When he didn't continue, I said, "Is that it?" I was going to try to explain why I did it. But there's no explanation that makes it okay. I was selfish. I was a coward. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too stupid to appreciate what I had. You're right. There's no explanation that makes it okay. I know. But I wanted you to hear me say it. That you weren't the problem. That you didn't do anything wrong. The failure was mine. I leaned against the conference table, studying him. Why now? It's been 6 months. I've been in therapy. Working through why I made the choices I did. My therapist said I needed to make direct amends to the people I hurt. You were at the top of that list. This isn't for me. This is for you. This is so you can feel better about what you did. Brandon flinched but nodded. Maybe that's part of it. But Simone, you deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved honesty and faithfulness and a partner who valued you. I failed at all of that. And I'm sorry. I looked at him, this man I'd loved for 8 years. This man who'd hurt me so deeply I didn't think I'd ever recover. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not love. Not hate. Just nothing. Thank you for the apology, I said. I hope therapy helps you. I hope you figure out whatever you need to figure out. But Brandon, we're done. This conversation doesn't change anything. It doesn't make us friends. It doesn't give you absolution. It just is what it is. I know. Your 5 minutes are up. Brandon stood. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he just nodded and walked out. I watched him leave through the office windows. Watched him get in his car and drive away. And I felt that last piece of connection break. He was really gone now. Really out of my life. I went back to my desk and pulled up the design plans I'd been working on. A new restaurant in downtown Atlanta. Modern but comfortable. Sophisticated but welcoming. My phone buzzed. A text from Jerome. Dinner tonight? I want to hear about the Savannah opening. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, yes. But Jerome, I need to be honest with you about something. What's that? I think I'm ready. Not for everything. Not all at once. But ready to try. Ready to see where this could go. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, that's all I'm asking for. A chance. Then let's have dinner. And talk about more than just work. Looking forward to it. I put my phone down and looked around my office. At the design plans and fabric samples and project schedules. At everything I'd built after my marriage fell apart. I'd come so far. I'd survived betrayal. I'd protected myself. I'd built a successful business. I'd proven I didn't need anyone to be happy. But maybe, just maybe, I was ready to want someone anyway. Not need them. Want them. There was a difference. Jerome wasn't Brandon. He'd never given me reason to doubt him. He'd been patient and honest and respectful. He'd let me heal at my own pace. Maybe he deserved a real chance. Maybe we both did. That evening, I met Jerome at a restaurant in Virginia Highland. Not our usual coffee shop or casual lunch place. Somewhere nice. Somewhere that said this was different. He was already there when I arrived, standing when I approached the table. Always respectful. Always thoughtful. You look beautiful, he said. Thank you. You look good too. We sat down. Ordered wine. Made small talk about work and the hotel opening and upcoming projects. Then Jerome said, so what changed? When you texted earlier, you seemed different. Brandon came to my office today. To apologize. Jerome's expression shifted. How did that go? It was fine. Anticlimactic, actually. He apologized. I accepted the apology but told him it didn't change anything. Then he left. How do you feel about it? Nothing. That's the thing. I didn't feel angry or sad or anything. I just felt done. Like that chapter is completely closed. I paused. Which made me realize something. What's that? That I've been holding on to the hurt as protection. As a shield against getting hurt again. But at some point that shield becomes a prison. And I don't want to live in prison anymore. Jerome reached across the table and took my hand. You're sure? I don't want to push you into something you're not ready for. I'm not ready for everything. I'm not ready to move in together or talk about marriage or any of that. But I'm ready to try dating. Really dating. Not just friendly dinners and professional collaboration. Something real. Something real. Jerome smiled. I can do that. I have rules though. Of course you do. I need things to move slow. I need honesty even when it's hard. I need you to understand that I might get scared sometimes. That I might pull back. That I'm learning how to trust again. I can do all of that. Anything else? No more talk about my ex. No comparing yourself to Brandon. You're not him. This isn't that. This is something new. Something different. And I want to keep it that way. Deal. Now can I ask you something? Sure. Will you go out with me this weekend? Not for work. Not as friends. As an actual date. Dinner, maybe a movie, maybe a walk. Whatever you want. I smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited about something that wasn't work. Yes, I'd like that. We finished dinner talking about everything except work. About his childhood in South Carolina. About my family in Florida. About places we wanted to travel. About dreams and hopes in the future. The future. I hadn't let myself think about the future in months. I'd been so focused on surviving the present. But sitting there with Jerome, laughing at his stories and sharing my own, I could see it. A future where I was happy and successful and also not alone. Where I had someone who respected me and valued me and treated me the way I deserved. A future where Brandon's betrayal was just something that happened once, not the defining moment of my life. When Jerome walked me to my car that night, he kissed me goodnight. Soft and brief and respectful. Thank you for giving this a chance. Thank you for waiting. You're worth waiting for, Simone. I hope you know that. I drove home to my condo, the condo I'd furnished myself and paid for with my own money. I walked into my space, my sanctuary, and felt genuinely content. I'd tested my husband and discovered his betrayal. I'd gotten my revenge through legal channels and careful planning. I'd protected my business and my assets. I'd walked away with my dignity intact. But more than that, I'd discovered who I was without him. I'd learned I was strong enough to stand alone. Successful enough to build my own life. Brave enough to start over. And now, maybe, I was ready to let someone stand beside me. Not to complete me or save me or fix what Brandon broke. Just to be there. To share the life I'd built. To add to it instead of taking from it. I'd wanted revenge and I got it. Complete. Satisfying. Fair. But what I got that was even better was myself. My strength. My independence. My future. And that was the happiest ending I could have asked for.
Unaware of his wife's $300 million inheritance, Daniel slammed the door of their family house, locking out the woman who built it brick by brick beside him. But not for nothing. He did it to marry her best friend, the same woman who used to toast their anniversaries and whisper, "You two are perfect together." To the world, Daniel looked victorious, a man trading failure for fortune. But beneath that smug smile hid a cruel miscalculation, because the poor wife he discarded wasn't just betrayed. She was becoming the most powerful woman he'd ever fear. Now whispers are spreading about what she did when she heard, and why Daniel hasn't been seen smiling since. But what did she do when the truth reached her? Why did her best friend suddenly vanish from their new home? And how did the locked-out wife turn one night of humiliation into the beginning of Daniel's ruin? Snow was falling like ash from a cold heaven the night Evelyn pounded on the mansion door she once called home. Her palms stung with frost, her breath came in shards, and the wind tore through her thin sweater as if the storm itself wanted her erased. Through the frost-glazed window, Daniel stood beside the fireplace, a drink in hand, his laughter glowing warm in the golden light. His parents were there too, pearls and cigars gleaming, eyes sparkling with satisfaction. And beside him, clothed in Evelyn's old silk robe, was Claire, her best friend. Evelyn's voice broke against the wood. "Daniel, please, let me in." Her fingers trembled as she reached for the handle. Locked. Again. Through the glass, Daniel's smirk widened. He raised his glass in mock salute before turning away. His father's laughter followed, deep and cruel, echoing through the storm. Evelyn stumbled back, watching their silhouettes blur in the frost. A part of her wanted to believe this wasn't real, that it was one of his cruel tests, another manipulation she'd somehow fail. But as the cold bit into her bones, she finally understood. They didn't just reject her. They wanted her erased. The snow gathered at her feet, swallowing her cries. And as she collapsed into the white silence, memories bled through her. The diner where it all began, the clang of plates, the scent of burnt coffee, and the man who'd walked in wearing power like a tailored coat. Daniel had been charming then, his smile the kind that promised rescue. She'd been 24, hopeful, broke, and invisible. He tipped more than her weekly pay, asked about her dreams, and told her she deserved better than grease and late shifts. Back then, he was a rising executive with family money and ambition that looked like magic to a girl who'd grown up counting coins for rent. He took her to places she never dreamed of, dressed her in silk, kissed her hand like she was royalty. When he proposed under the city lights, she thought she'd been chosen by fate. But fate, it turned out, had sharp teeth. In the early years, he'd whisper, "I built this life for us." But slowly those words twisted. "I built this life for you, so you owe me." Her world shrank. He replaced her friends with his associates, her choices with his preferences. Every suggestion became a rule. Every disagreement became proof she was ungrateful. He isolated her under the guise of protection. And when she began noticing how often Claire, her best friend, appeared uninvited, how Daniel's mother praised Claire's refinement, she convinced herself she was overthinking. Daniel said so too, smiling like he pitied her. "You're imagining things again," he'd murmur, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You always make drama from nothing." The gaslighting came gently, like fog seeping under a door, soft, invisible, suffocating. At dinners, his parents mocked her background, disguised as jokes. When she tried to speak, Daniel would touch her hand and whisper, "They mean well." But it was Claire's laugh that cut the deepest, the soft, knowing laugh that said, "You don't belong here anymore." Months before the snow, Evelyn found the photos. Daniel and Claire in the beach house she'd decorated herself. The same robe, the same smile he once gave her. When she confronted him, he turned it on her, claiming she was paranoid, unstable, hysterical. Within days, her credit cards were frozen, her name vanished from the joint accounts, and a lawyer arrived with documents she'd never signed. Her parents, who adored Daniel's wealth, urged her to be patient. Her father said, "You should be grateful he still wants to talk to you." Then came the humiliation. Her car, repossessed, her jewelry appearing on Claire's social media, her image dragged online as the unstable ex-wife of a saintly man. And now here she was, frozen, alone, exiled from the life she helped build. The lights in the mansion dimmed, laughter fading. The door remained closed. Evelyn's breath slowed. She fell to her knees in the snow, whispering, "You win." Then the world went dark. When she woke, she wasn't in heaven or hell, but in a women's shelter, the smell of antiseptic and cheap coffee in the air. A stranger's voice said softly, "You're safe now." Evelyn turned her head. An older woman sat beside her, silver hair tied neatly, eyes both kind and sharp. "I'm Margaret," she said. "You're lucky someone found you when they did." Evelyn blinked. Her lips cracked when she spoke. "I lost everything." Margaret's eyes didn't waver. "Maybe not. Sometimes losing everything is how we find out what they took." Outside, the storm had ended, but for Evelyn, something colder had begun to thaw. The first night at the shelter was silent, except for the hum of the radiator and the whisper of women crying in nearby rooms. Evelyn lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, feeling like her body was still trapped in the snow outside the mansion. Her fingers ached with frostbite, her heart even worse. She didn't know what hurt more, the cold or the fact that no one came looking for her. Not her parents. Not even the friends she'd helped with rent when times were tough. Margaret visited every morning with 2 mugs of coffee. She never asked for Evelyn's story outright. She just sat there listening when Evelyn's voice finally found its way back. "He took everything," Evelyn whispered one morning. "My accounts, my house, even my name." Margaret looked at her over the steam. "Then we'll take it back, but not the way he expects." There was a steadiness to her tone that unsettled and comforted Evelyn at once. She later learned that Margaret had once been a lawyer, a good one. She'd retired after losing her only daughter to domestic abuse. The system, she said, had let power protect cruelty. Now she spent her retirement helping women rebuild, not through vengeance but through precision. Under Margaret's guidance, Evelyn began to see what had been done to her not as heartbreak, but as a strategy, a deliberate erasure built on signatures, silence, and lies. She spent hours going through the few belongings she'd salvaged, old bank receipts, insurance papers, property deeds she'd been too naive to read. For weeks, she pieced together fragments of her life like shards of a broken mirror. One night, as snow fell again beyond the shelter windows, Margaret leaned over the table, her reading glasses reflecting the lamplight. "This isn't just divorce, Evelyn. These are forged signatures, illegal transfers. See here? They moved funds under your name 3 days before they froze your accounts." Evelyn's breath caught. "So they planned it all?" Margaret nodded. "It's financial fraud. If we can link this to his company, he's in deeper trouble than he realizes." For the first time in months, Evelyn felt something stir inside her. Not rage, not despair, but purpose. She began volunteering at the shelter to stay busy, helping other women, sorting clothes, serving food. Each face she saw, each bruised arm and trembling smile, became a reflection of her own survival. And yet, at night, she'd return to the corner table with Margaret, building her case like an architect of truth. One afternoon, while searching through an old laptop Daniel had once gifted her, she found hidden folders, emails, spreadsheets, documents marked confidential. They showed transactions between Daniel's family business and offshore accounts. One file was labeled EM, Settlement Draft. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. It wasn't a settlement. It was a staged agreement to paint her as mentally unstable in exchange for hush money and a restraining order. It even included psychiatric notes from a doctor she'd never met. Margaret's eyes hardened as she read. "He was building your downfall months before he locked you out." Evelyn pressed her shaking hands to her mouth. "He wanted me erased legally." "Then we won't just prove your innocence," Margaret said. "We'll prove his guilt." But going to the police wasn't enough. Daniel's family were donors, board members, and benefactors of the same institutions meant to protect people like her. Margaret knew that road would vanish in red tape. "We need the truth in public," she said. "Someone with reach and courage." Through the shelter's network, Margaret introduced Evelyn to a journalist named Noah Reyes, a quiet man with tired eyes and a reputation for exposing corporate corruption. When Evelyn told him everything, he didn't interrupt. He just recorded, asked for copies, and finally said, "If even half of this checks out, we'll burn their empire to the ground, with the truth." For months, Evelyn worked in silence. She met Noah in cafes, passed him files through encrypted emails, watched as he followed the money trail her husband thought was buried forever. At times she wavered, terrified of being humiliated again. But every doubt faded when she saw the shelter's women rebuilding their lives. They reminded her that survival wasn't shame, it was defiance. And still at night, she'd dream of the mansion, the frosted window, the laughter, Daniel's smirk as she begged in the snow. Each time, the image hurt less. Not because it faded, but because she began to see herself differently, not as the woman outside the door, but as the one walking away from it. The first sign of Daniel's crumbling came quietly. A rumor online, a small headline buried in a financial section. Audit inquiry at Carrington Holdings. Then another, anonymous source alleges misuse of client funds. Evelyn smiled faintly when she saw it. Margaret simply said, "The fuse is lit." Weeks later, news broke that Carrington Holdings accounts were frozen pending investigation. Claire's glamorous post vanished overnight. Daniel's parents released a public statement calling the allegations defamatory, but Evelyn knew this was only the beginning. Then one evening, while she stood outside the shelter helping carry donations, she saw it, a glossy magazine cover in a passerby's hand. Daniel and Claire, dressed for an engagement shoot, smiling beneath the headline, "Love Prevails, CEO Finds Happiness After Hard Divorce." The wind turned bitter again. Evelyn stared at the image, her jaw tightening. Then she whispered almost gently, "Not for long." Margaret joined her, following her gaze. Let them celebrate, she said. They've already built their stage. Now we'll decide what plays on it. Evelyn turned toward the horizon where the city lights shimmered like cold fire. She wasn't the shivering woman outside that mansion anymore. Something stronger lived inside her now, a quiet storm gathering its power. The night before their engagement party, Noah sent a text. Everything's ready. Tomorrow the world hears your story. Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The storm outside the window began to rise again. But this time, she wasn't afraid of it. The Carrington mansion gleamed under crystal chandeliers and strings of gold lights that night, as if wealth itself could wash away sin. Daniel stood at the top of the grand staircase, champagne in hand, dressed in a designer tuxedo that shimmered under the flashes of photographers. Beside him, Claire wore white. Not bridal white, but something close enough to provoke. Reporters murmured, guests clinked glasses, and his parents floated through the crowd like royalty, greeting senators, CEOs, and socialites who owed them favors. Every camera in the room was poised to celebrate his new beginning. Every lens pointed upward until the power shifted. At exactly 8:30, the massive LED screen behind the stage flickered. The music faltered. Conversations froze mid-laugh. Daniel frowned, whispering to a technician, but before the man could react, the screen came alive. Not with the slideshow of their love story, but with files, images, and documents. It began with an audio clip, Daniel's voice. I told you, Claire, we have to make her look unstable. Once she signs the revised documents, we'll control everything. She won't even know what she owned. A hush rippled through the hall like an electric wave. The laughter died. Claire's face drained of color as the crowd turned toward the screen. Then came the bank transfers, offshore accounts, shell companies, property deeds, every secret laid bare, time-stamped, authenticated, undeniable. Daniel's father tried to step forward, shouting, "This is fake! Cut it off!" But the sound system carried a new voice, calm, measured, devastating. It was Noah Reyes broadcasting live. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's engagement party was meant to celebrate the merger of love and legacy. Instead, it exposes one of the largest cases of fraud and forged documentation tied to Carrington Holdings. The evidence you're seeing was provided by Evelyn Carrington, Daniel's legal wife, who was locked out of this very mansion last winter after her husband and his family conspired to steal her assets and erase her identity. Cameras turned. Gasps followed. Evelyn stood near the entrance, cloaked in a long black coat, her hair tied back, her presence quiet but commanding. She hadn't come for applause. She came for closure. Her eyes didn't seek Daniel's, only the window where she'd once begged to be let in. The frost had melted now, replaced by flashing lights and panic. Daniel's mother rushed toward the podium, screaming for security, but before she could speak, the doors opened again, this time not for guests. Federal agents in dark suits swept in with warrants. The room erupted. Guests backed away, clutching pearls and phones. Cameras pivoted toward chaos as officers read the charges aloud. Conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, identity theft, financial manipulation. Daniel tried to step forward, shouting, "I don't know what this is. This is a setup." But Noah's voice echoed from the speakers once more, calm as judgment. The signatures, the transactions, and the testimonies all confirm it. Mr. Carrington, you are under investigation for orchestrating financial and emotional abuse against your wife. The full evidence will be published tonight. Daniel's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Claire's hand trembled as agents approached her. "Daniel, say something! Tell them!" she cried. But Daniel said nothing. His face twisted between rage and fear as he saw Evelyn, calm, still, watching him as the officers read his rights. Their eyes met across the room. For a moment, everything else dissolved. The music, the crowd, the scandal. Just the two of them, like the first time they met in that diner. But now his charm was gone, stripped bare, leaving only the hollow man who thought he could rewrite her existence. Evelyn took one step forward, her voice soft but clear. "You locked me out of my home," she said, just loud enough for him to hear. "But I built the door." Daniel's face fell, and for the first time, the man who'd once controlled every room looked small, drenched in the flash of police lights instead of camera bulbs. Outside, reporters swarmed as the Carringtons were escorted out in handcuffs. The once pristine snow of the driveway turned to slush under the weight of chaos. Claire screamed at photographers, covering her face, but it was too late. The world had seen her without the mask of elegance. As Evelyn stepped outside, the cold night air met her face. Not biting this time, but freeing. She stood still, breathing it in, the noise fading into the distance. Margaret approached quietly, wrapped in her wool coat, her eyes full of quiet pride. "You did it," she said. Evelyn shook her head. "No," she whispered. "We did it. Every woman they tried to bury, they forgot we were seeds." Behind her, the mansion flickered with lights and chaos. Ahead of her, dawn began to break, a thin line of gold over the horizon. She didn't smile yet. She didn't need to. There was still more to do. Justice had begun, but redemption was waiting. The world now knew the truth, but Evelyn's victory wasn't measured in headlines. It was in the silence that followed, the first peaceful silence she'd heard in years. And as she turned to leave, she glanced one last time at the frosted window, the same one where she'd once begged, broken and shivering. Her reflection stared back at her, strong and unbowed. This time, she walked away not as a victim, but as the woman who opened her own door to freedom. Months passed before the snow returned, but this winter it didn't feel like an enemy. Evelyn stood before the mansion gates, the same iron gates that once kept her out, and watched as a group of volunteers carried in boxes labeled linens, supplies, books. The brass plaque by the entrance gleamed under the pale sun. It read, "The Haven House for Women Rising." The mansion that once echoed with cruelty now hummed with laughter, soft music, and the voices of women rebuilding their lives. The chandeliers still hung above the grand halls, but their light was warmer now. The ballroom, where Daniel once flaunted his wealth, had been transformed into a communal dining space where survivors shared stories over steaming bowls of soup. The guest rooms, once places of silent judgment, were now sanctuaries filled with color and peace. Evelyn walked through the corridors slowly, her fingertips brushing against the walls she had painted years ago. The same walls she once decorated with dreams that turned to scars. But now every scar had a story, and every story had purpose. In one of the sitting rooms, Margaret sat surrounded by women filling out job applications, her glasses perched low on her nose. She looked up and smiled when she saw Evelyn. "They said the first month we'd have 5 residents. We have 32. Evelyn smiled softly. "Then we'll need more beds." They shared a knowing look, one built on battles survived, on nights of doubt turned into dawns of resolve. When word of the Carrington scandal spread, the public turned swiftly. The empire Daniel's family had built on deceit collapsed piece by piece. Their assets were seized, their names stripped from charities, their influence dissolved. Daniel's sentencing had been swift and merciless. 10 years for fraud, 5 for forgery, and restitution for every stolen cent. Claire disappeared from headlines after the trial, her silence louder than apology. Evelyn didn't attend the sentencing. She didn't need to. Her victory wasn't in his downfall, but in her rebirth. She spent her days working at Haven House, organizing therapy sessions, setting up workshops for financial literacy, legal aid, and career training. Each time a woman arrived at the door with a suitcase and fear in her eyes, Evelyn saw a reflection of her past self, and each time she welcomed them in, she healed a little more. Still, there were moments when ghosts lingered. Some nights, she would stand at the same frosted window where she once begged for mercy and see her reflection in the glass. The same face but different eyes. Eyes that no longer pleaded. Eyes that witnessed and forgave herself. One evening, as the first snow began to fall, there was a knock on the door. Margaret answered and her expression changed. "Evelyn," she said quietly, "you might want to see this." On the porch stood her parents, aged, uncertain, stripped of the arrogance that once glittered around them. Her mother's voice trembled. "Evelyn, we're sorry. We didn't know what he did to you. We lost everything after the investigation. We have nowhere to go." For a moment, the air felt heavy again, like that night long ago. Her father's eyes glistened, not with love, but with shame. We shouldn't have believed him over you. Evelyn stood silent, the memory of their cold words echoing faintly in her mind. Be patient. You should be grateful. She looked at them now, not with hatred, but with final clarity. I forgave you a long time ago, she said softly, but forgiveness doesn't mean I have to open the door. Her mother's lips parted in disbelief. Evelyn's hand rested on the frame, the same way she'd once clung to it in the storm, and then she gently closed it. Not out of cruelty, but peace. Margaret's eyes met hers, approving and proud. Inside, the laughter of women drifted through the hall again. The sound didn't sting, it healed. Evelyn turned, walking through the mansion that no longer belonged to the Carringtons, but to those who needed it most. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, she wandered back to the grand hall. The moonlight spilled through the high windows, painting the floor in silver. She stood before the window where it all began, the one she'd pounded on with frozen fists, the one that had once mirrored her despair. Her reflection looked back at her now, strong, calm, unbroken. She reached out, pressing her palm to the cold glass. For a moment, the wind outside howled like that night. Distant laughter carried faintly in memory. But this time, Evelyn smiled. The storm didn't destroy me, she whispered. It revealed me. Tears shimmered but didn't fall. Behind her, the soft murmur of life, women sharing stories, children's laughter, the creak of new hope being born, filled the once empty space. She turned off the lights, leaving only the moon to watch over Haven House. As she walked down the corridor, she thought of all the doors that had been closed on women like her, and all the ones she would now open. Outside, the snow fell again, quiet and pure, covering the scars of the past. Evelyn stepped into it without fear, her breath steady, her heart light. For the first time, she didn't look back, because she wasn't the woman pounding on the door anymore. She was the one holding the key.